Hey guys, it's Adam here. Apologize for the random, well, here's my mic. You can see it's actually a fucking PS4 headset. Ooh, how does that sound? Anyway, I'm in New York City at the moment. You can see down there's Times Square. I don't know how good of a view that is. Maybe that's a little better. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter why I'm in New York. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about Shenmue today because there's a whole bunch of people out there who are talking about, oh, I want the game in 60 frames per second, I want the game in 4K, and I want this, and I want that. And I thought it would be kind of good to make a video just kind of addressing some of that stuff. So I actually, the thing is, I actually brought in a ringer for this.
Hey everybody, I'm James. How are you?
This is James. This is my buddy James Reiner. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, what's up guys? As you said, I'm James Reiner. I've been a part of the Shenmue community since like 2003 on Shenmue Dojo. And I've assisted with Team U a little bit on the tweet-a-thon every third of the month, which you should totally check out. And I'm also a co-administrator of the Shenmue 500K Facebook page, which is an official recognized community of Shenmue 3 and also a community that caters to Shenmue fans around the world.
So there you go. This guy knows a lot about the technical aspects of Shenmue, which was actually like the biggest reason I wanted him involved. Can you tell him a little bit more about what you've done with the game technically?
Yeah, sure. So I do have an interest in technology to begin with, and that extends to Shenmue. I do have a YouTube channel where you can see some of this stuff, and
I'll have a link in the description.
Yeah, thank you. And some of the things I've worked on are like hacks for the games and mods, as well as making mods that other people like Giorgio or Spiro or any of those awesome talented people. I try to make them more available to the general fan base of the game.
Yeah, so the dude knows what he's doing with a lot of stuff. So the first thing we wanted to address was one of the questions that has been going around for a while, which is, where's my 60 frames per second? What's the deal? Modern games all have 60 frames per second. I keep hearing Shenmue only going to have 30. What's the deal? Maybe I should unsub. Well, just chill out. I didn't even make the game. Just relax already. James here is going to explain to you very carefully why Shenmue is not going to be in 60 frames per second.
Yeah, so one thing that becomes apparent, when you play Shenmue, obviously we know it runs in 30 frames. And we know that there are ways to unlock the frame rate through things like emulation, and, other little hacky methods and whatnot. But what becomes apparent is when you make the game run at a frame rate higher than 30 frames, you start to see the behavior that the game runs fast. Like, if you do something weird, and one of the emulators that a lot of people use is null DC, right? And you can, in the settings of the emulator, you can be like, don't let the game run at the same speed as the audio, which causes the game to run at a high frame rate, but then you'll have Rio walking 10 miles per hour, which shows that, long story short, the physics of Shenmue is locked and hard-coded to that 30 frames a second.
Now, but I saw videos, James, where the game ran at 60 frames per second, so I don't think you know what you're saying.
I have no clue what I'm talking about.
No, I don't think you do. So maybe everyone should tweet hate at him. No, I'm just kidding.
No, please
Can you explain to him? All right, so people do post that link a lot. They're like, but I saw this video where it's running at 60 frames per second, so you don't know what you're talking about. Can you explain what they were seeing?
Yeah, so there are videos by really awesome people out on YouTube that show Shenmue running in what seems to be a native 60 frames per second. And if you go to those YouTube videos, you can read their description, and what they're saying is they're recorded at 30 frames, but you can use a post-processing method. I think it's called frame interpolation. I could be wrong about that. And what that kind of is you'll record something at 30 frames. And this just isn't Shenmue. You can do this to any video. And you kind of just copy frames and insert them one after another to double the frame rate. And what you get seems to be a really smooth experience, but it's just post-processing.
In other words, it's more of a video editing trick than it is the game.
Exactly.
So yeah, to actually play the game at 60 frames per second essentially just screws with it too much, and you'd never really get that true experience. So while a lot of people say, hey man, I want 60 frames per second, you can't really have it with that particular game. It's just not the way that game was meant to run. It simply can't. So the next point up is 4K. Everybody's like, I want the 4K. Where's my 4K? Emulators do it in 4K. So there's 2 points to make on this.
Yeah.
The game is not going to run in 4K. It's just, I think it's kind of obvious at this point.
Yeah.
And it will be running in a native 1080p though. Now, you want to tell them maybe why emulators can do it at 4K?
Yeah, so that's kind of a really hard thing to nail down completely because emulators are coded differently. In the case of the Dreamcast world, now there are I'm assuming some of the emulator programmers out there are probably watching this video, so feel free to correct me in the comments. But from my understanding, from what I've dealt with, is emulators are kind of I like to think of them as like a wrapper around the game, right? Emulators emulate the hardware, and they interpret how the game should run on it, right? Because what you're doing is you're kind of saying like, hey computer, you're actually a Dreamcast, now run this game to the best of your ability. But those, I don't want to say inaccuracies, but what the kind of things you can do is like, since it is kind of like a wrapper around it, you can kind of say like, hey Dreamcast, you're a lot more like powerful than you are, just go ahead and output it at a higher resolution. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, that's more at like a global scale and not within the game engine. And I feel like you kind of don't have that same ability when you're getting a game to work from its source code rather than writing a wrapper around it.
Essentially, the emulators kind of artificially balloon things up. Now, that doesn't mean it doesn't come with benefits. We're not disputing that. But basically, you had two options here when it came to re-releasing this game. Sega had two choices. It was either just build a Dreamcast emulator for Shenmue I and II that's doing essentially that, where it could theoretically hit an arbitrary 4K number just so they could write that on the package and say Shenmue in 4K.
Yeah, it's a
buzzword. Or they could have done it the correct way, which is what they did. Go back into that source code, which this dude can tell you is a garbled fucking spaghetti code mess bullshit nightmare held together with rubber bands and duct tape. It's amazing that it works in the first place. And the fact that these guys actually took the time to properly restore it is up there with like film restoration efforts.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like if I took an old VHS tape of like some, movie from the 80s, like I took a VHS tape of Jaws, captured it to a computer and then arbitrarily ballooned it up to 4K and said, look, I technically hit 4K. It's like, would you rather have that or would you have like a proper film transfer even if it ran in 1080p? I think I'd rather have the latter.
Yeah.
Now,
it makes me happy to see them take such care of the game.
Now, that's not a perfect comparison, but you get my point.
Yeah.
I would rather see them take the time to rebuild that game properly for modern consoles, even if it hits a lower resolution benchmark just to hit it, as opposed to just, hey, I hit a sales point.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck that. And they need serious credit. You guys don't understand. Like, they need serious credit for the fact that they actually took time to restore the game.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Because, like, if you look at, like, the older, like, Shenmue documentaries videos of, like, when you actually see the people working on the game, there are a lot of people that worked on Shenmue. And, like, we don't know how many people are working, D3T, the developer. We don't know how many people are actually working the game, obviously, until we see the credits of the game. And to think that there are a team of people out there that are restoring the work of, 200 people?
You would know better than I do.
And I think it's a rumor. It might have been confirmed at one point, but like Shenmue was put together on spreadsheets, physically written spreadsheets. Like this was before the days of like change management.
Yeah.
And that only just goes to show you like how crazy it is to go back in the source code and like get this game to work. Especially Shenmue 1, because Shenmue 1 is so hardware specific.
Yeah.
Like, that's nuts. Like, kudos to them, man.
Yeah, so basically, when you see people out there being like, Sega took the cash grab lazy way out, those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. This was a massive restoration effort, and it is nothing short of a technological miracle that this is actually coming into existence. Aside from the social and economic miracle that's enough fan pressure actually made this possible.
Yeah.
So, seriously, just because you didn't get your 4K just to hit that arbitrary benchmark, don't be upset, man. Like, they put a lot into making this possible. So the last point we want to make here about all these like other little technical things is the cutscenes.
Okay.
So it is common knowledge now, amongst Shenmue fans anyway, that the cutscenes of the game are going to remain in 4:3, unlike the gameplay presentation, which will be in widescreen 16:9. Now here's the thing. Even I, from Sega, did not get any special insight into this. So we enter speculation time.
Yeah.
And we admit that up front. Now, what we were told, and what is common in public knowledge now, is that the cutscenes were originally done 4:3, which is true. That is true. But why would the gameplay become 16:9 while the cutscenes are not? Well, we had a good little theory, James.
Yeah, so let's remove the technical stuff.
Sure.
Right, because obviously we're not the ones coding the game, so we can't say for sure, although we can speculate, which we'll get to. But I think one thing that becomes apparent, especially when you follow the history of the Shenmue I and II re-release, one thing that comes to mind that I feel is a good basis for this theory is when Sega first spoke about them being interested in doing this, they responded to one of our community members, who's actually a friend of mine. Hi, I'm not going to name drop you, but what's up, dude? And they responded saying pretty much like they were interested, but they wanted to do it in a way that represented how it was on the original consoles. And I think that's a very important point to make. And it comes to mind also when you look at how Shenmue was made. Yu Suzuki had a vision, right? He had a vision for what the game was supposed to look like. And the cutscenes were in the vision of kind of being filmed kind of like a movie,
they are
actually,
a film, essentially.
Right? And Yu Suzuki is very particular about his work, and I feel that how he designed them is meant to be in 4x3. And I feel that Sega and D3T recognize that. And honestly, I would make the same choice because of just, like, my love for this series and Yu Suzuki. And I feel that they kept it at 4x3 purely for a creative reason.
Exactly. Essentially what we're saying here is the cutscenes, emulators have been able to replicate and create essentially the 16:9 aspect.
As well as special hacks you can do on the Dreamcast version.
But
and the Xbox
there's
version.
really nothing in that space that's actually visually interesting or necessary for the frame. Point we're making is, again, speculation, it was a creative choice to keep it 4x3 so that it still represented the actual vision that Yu Suzuki had.
Exactly.
Now, one can argue, well, wait a minute, if that's your point, then why is the gameplay going to be in 16:9? Well, the truth is, the majority of the gameplay isn't meant to be cinematic. It's meant to be gameplay. When the story is trying to be communicated to you, it's usually through 4x3 cutscenes so that you focus on very specific points with your eye. Arbitrarily expanding it does essentially create a detrimental effect to the story, whereas the gameplay, not so much. But yeah, I mean, that's, again, a theory. Even I from Sega have not heard any confirmation about that, and I can't make that clear enough. That's just kind of what we think the real reason is, but without actually knowing it. But yeah, so I hope that kind of clears up some of this. I mean, to kind of put it in perspective, comparing it to a movie again. Let's say that I said, hey guys, I found this like old 1977 print of Star Wars no one's ever seen, and it's, James is dying. It's 1977 print of Star Wars that has like 20% extra frame on each side. Now the problem with this cut, well, you can see more of the movie, but there's the guy's hand like moving the TIE fighter and stuff, but it doesn't fuck with the art, right? It doesn't ruin the movie when you see a guy's hand moving the TIE fighter or whatever. No, yeah, it kind of does. So the point is, you don't necessarily need all that frame. It hurts the story. At least, again, that's what we think. You got anything else you want to say about any of this?
Yeah, so I do want to cover one technical thing.
Sure.
One of the things that people could also say, and I would say this too, is that there are hacks for the game that do let it run in 16:9. And I think one point to make about those, and I've used them, if you go on Shenmue Dojo, there's a very talented man who I look up to this guy. His name is Aspiro, right? And he found out how to actually like patch the game to make the game engine render in widescreen. And if you were to go that route, they're going through the source code and changing it. So one of the things that comes to my mind as a technical guy is, what if the changes they had to make to get this game to work on modern hardware breaks the ability to do that? Like, because the game engine renders in 16:9, but like, what if some of the fixes they had to do to get it to work broke the ability for the game engine to even do that?
Yeah, essentially saying all the emulators have been built off of the Dreamcast version of 20 plus years of existence and knowledge around that. To get this thing to run on modern hardware without being emulated, what if they just couldn't do that trick anymore for whatever reason?
Yeah.
Again, this is speculation. We don't know that. But the point we just wanted to make was just to kind of answer some of these questions as best as we could, particularly the 60 frames per second one, because that one's pretty well known. But yeah, do you have anything else you want to contribute to that?
No, I think we covered some pretty good ground.
All right, so hopefully that helps you guys. Obviously the game's right around the corner on August 21st. Obviously very much looking forward to playing it once again. There's going to be more Shenmue videos. I got the really cool E3 one is coming up. You're going to like that video, dude. Actually, you know what? Right after we stop, I'm going to let this man watch that video. No one else has seen it yet. I'm going to let him watch it.
I'm so excited.
He's so much excited.
And
Sega is going to be posting one that I filmed with them in Japan. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say when, so I would say pay attention to their YouTube channel. and you'll be seeing that sometime soon. So that's it for now, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I want to thank James very much for being involved here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Again, his channel will be in the description. He's got more information on Shenmue. He goes a lot more technical. He's got a lot of theories about story. This dude knows a lot about Shenmue. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.